Well, hello, English scholars. We are beginning with Chapter 6 on page 81. This entire chapter is devoted to Pearl, and Hawthorne does that. He gives us whole paragraphs, or rather, whole chapters about different characters. For example, the previous chapter really dealt specifically with Hester. I'm assuming we'll have other chapters about other characters as they come into play in the novel. But this one's about Pearl, and it's time for the author, for Hawthorne, to help catch us up on the novel. So he begins with Pearl and gives us a little history there about how Pearl got her name, and that she is there on page 81. It says about 10 lines up, but she named the infant Pearl as being a great price, purchased with all she had, her mother's only treasure. So it's a little bit kind of the idea again of mirror imagery, that we've got this perfect child being compared to its sin-filled mother. But Pearl's not a normal child. She's not abnormal, but anything that is, if you think about it, the greatest treasure at the greatest cost has a lot of burden on it. Pearl is described as a lovely immortal flower. She's passionate, which really, if I talk about a child being a really passionate child or being really energetic, what I really mean, it's a euphemism for saying maybe that the child is hard to control, doesn't like the rules of civilization, and makes it a lot tougher to be around. It's also that Pearl is a nonconformist. She is like, on page 83, she is very much like her mother in that. If you go down to that really long paragraph and go to the end of it, about 2/3 of the way down, it says, "The warfare of Hester's spirit at that epoch was perpetuated in Pearl. She could recognize her wild, desperate, defiant mood, the flightiness of her temper, and even some of the very cloud shapes of gloom and despondency that brooded in her heart. They were now illuminated by the morning radiance of a young child's disposition, but later in the day of earthly existence might be prolific of the storm and whirlwind." Great imagery here, and it's the idea that the turmoil, again, that she feels internally is outwardly manifested by Pearl. Pearl is alone. She is a lonely, lonely child. Her mother tries to control her, and that's on page 84, but it's beyond, it says the task was beyond her skill. She had a peculiar look about her right in the middle of page 84. It said, "It was a look so intelligent yet inexplicable, so perverse, sometimes so malicious, but generally accompanied by a wild flow of spirits that Hester could not help questioning at such time whether Pearl was a human child." Hawthorne lets us know that Pearl is a child, she is human, but there are numerous instances where he compares her to an imp, to a wild child. Certainly she's one who is at home with nature and kind of more of an internal world. But we have more words on 85 that have to do connotatively with a word like imp or the image of it. They are secluded from society. On page 86, near the bottom of the page, mother and daughter stood together in the same circle of seclusion from human society, and in the nature of the child seemed to be perpetuated those unquiet elements that had distracted Hester Prynne before Pearl's birth, but had since begun to be soothed away by the softening influence of maternity. So we kind of have, again, that mirror imagery that Hester sees herself in Pearl. And then we have how she feels about nature. This will come into play several times. So those of you who have nature as a symbol, you're going to see some ideas about it. But But the pine trees on page 87, aged, black, and solemn, that's about 10 lines down, flinging groans and other melancholy utterances on the breeze, needed little transformation to figure as Puritan elders. So she would invent this little world because she was in such isolation from everyone else, with using the natural elements as her playthings. The first things that we really have an idea of maybe the intellect that Pearl possesses is when she was very young. The very first thing that she seemed to be aware of is on page 88. And, you know, we all have those moments when we notice something for the first time and yet we've been looking at it all along. But for Pearl, it was on page 88, about 12 lines down. But that first object of which Pearl seemed to become aware was, shall we say it, the scarlet letter on Hester's bosom. And Pearl pays attention to it. She sees it. And it's the first object that she's aware of. She tries to grab it. And in fact, Hester never really feels safe because she's always aware of the fact that Pearl notices it. We're going to see this with Pearl again, so try to pay attention to it. So the A is the thing that isolates and separates Hester from society, but I would suggest that the A also separates Pearl. She wants to know what it is, she's interested in it, she wants to touch it. Later on she'll actually want to have her own A, but it isolates her. So when on page 86 at the bottom, when mother and daughter stood together in the same circle of isolation, they are separating themselves from the rest of the world, and they have no choice. It's being done to them, and it's being done because of the A. This is when we see Hester's strength. I mean, we know she's strong because she is willing to withstand the ridicule of everyone in Boston instead of revealing the name of Pearl's father. But we also see her strength in how she dresses Pearl, and Pearl is dressed beautifully. It's her strength is in her rebellion. She rebels too with the A, if you think about it, because she could have made an A that was really small and subdued, like the gossips in the beginning had been worried about. But instead, she makes it big, as if she flaunts it, she owns it. Well, I never said I was an artist, but is there evidence in here that makes Pearl less than human? Or is there evidence in this chapter that would make us think that she is more demon child than human child? That's something to think about. And if you find in the side of the demon child, then why in the world would Hawthorne feel compared to present this child who is innocent but the symbol of sin in that manner? In this chapter, we have Hester and Pearl going to Governor Bellingham's house. Now, Pearl is now the age of 3, which, again, threes, right? Which would be considered the age of reason. If you ever talk to a 3-year-old, you can actually talk to them and have a conversation. The thing about Pearl here is that until we really get to Mark Twain and The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, most of the characters in novels prior to that sound the same. So while Pearl is 3 years old, the dialogue that Hawthorne gives her is not that of a 3-year-old. She sounds almost as if she is the same age as her parents. So they are going to this to the hall, and their purpose is, well, related to Hester's job. She's going to deliver, and it tells us this on page 91, a pair of gloves. But she's also using the idea delivering the gloves twofold. She's going to deliver the gloves, but she also wants to appeal to him because she has heard a rumor that they are going to, and it says this in the middle of page 91, deprive her of her child. In part, this is because of how Pearl acts. If she really is the demon child, then she is not of God. And what the Puritans would have wanted more than anything is to have their children having godlike qualities, or at the very least be able to have the hope that they would go to heaven with a sign of grace. On page 92, we again see how beautiful Pearl is, that she is a rich, near the bottom of the page, about 10 lines up, she is a rich and luxuriant beauty, a beauty that shone with deep and vivid tints. There was a fire in her. On page 93, at the very top of the page, there's the idea about the Scarlet Letter. Page 93, it says, it was the Scarlet Letter in another form, the Scarlet Letter endowed with life. And it refers directly to Pearl. So she is, there's a lot of words. Scarlet is related to Pearl. She's having a tough time. So on page 97, they are waiting for to be admitted to Governor Bellingham, and on 96 and 97 they're actually looking in a mirror, and in those days a mirror would have either been concave or convex, and so they're looking in the mirror, and the thing that is predominant inside the mirror happens to be the letter A, because the way the mirror has distorted the body, and it makes the A seem a lot bigger than everything else. And that's on page 97. The Scarlet Letter was represented in exaggerated gigantic proportions so as to be greatly the most prominent feature of appearance. In truth, she, Hester, seems absolutely hidden behind it. So the people have receded into the background, and the Pearl is, not the Pearl, the A is much taller, bigger than everyone else. So while they're waiting, Hester pulls Pearl away and has her go into the garden, which is filled with beautiful flowers. The flowers, though, are interesting. So if you look at 97, that last big paragraph, 3 or 4 lines into the paragraph, they're looking at everything that's there, and it says, but the proprietor appeared already to have relinquished as hopeless the effort to perpetuate on this side of the Atlantic in a hard soil, and amid the close struggle for subsistence, the native English taste for ornamental gardening. Cabbages grew in plain sight, and pumpkin vine brewed in some distance. So the garden, the original traditional English garden that had been planted there, has fallen to pieces. It has been diluted. The proprietor, its hold on American soil has been relinquished. This is a comment by the narrator, and hence by Hawthorne, on Puritanism, because the foothold Puritanism had in the colonies has now dissipated and is greatly reduced. And we should note that at the end of this chapter, there is a red rose bush, and Pearl wants some, and actually gets quite upset that she can't have some. But the timing is not right for her to do that.